For joining today's webinar entitled How to Be #1 on Google and Achieve Your Social Marketing Goals. I'm Michelle Boardman, the Director of Social Marketing for the Technical Assistance Network for Children's Behavioral Health, funded by the Substance Abuse and Mental Health Services Administration within the U.S. Department of Health and Human Services. I'd like to welcome you to the Social Marketing Learning Community today. This learning community is facilitated by me, Michael Collado, Communications Coordinator at Youth Move National, and Anita Bryant, Lead Social Marketing Specialist here at the TA Network. We hold webinars monthly that are designed to support those who are undertaking social marketing work around children's mental health. That could be in communities, states, tribes, and territories across the U.S., and includes both those with and without federal grants. We try hard to address topics that are meaningful to you in your work, and we welcome your suggestions for future webinar topics. We love for these sessions to be interactive, and we encourage your comments, questions, and insights. Please use the chat box on your screen to engage. You can start by introducing yourself, tell us where you're from. And below the chat box, you'll see a spot to download the slides for today's presentation. And as a follow-up, we will send a link to the recording of today's webinar. And at the very end of today's webinar, there's a very brief survey. And we'd love your time in responding just before you click off, because we take your feedback really seriously, and we use it to improve these sessions. So with that, we'll kick off today's webinar. And some of you may have joined us in past months for the series of 4 webinars we did this spring and early summer around messaging. And we thought that this webinar would be a perfect follow-up, because once you've carefully crafted your message, the information in this webinar will be useful to you in helping you reach your audience and make sure those messages get where they need to go. So I'd love to introduce today's speaker, Matt Mcdermott. He is the Associate Vice President at ID5, based here in Baltimore. And ID5 is a wonderful marketing firm that I've known about for several years and worked with them on other projects. And they have a really depth of knowledge around digital social marketing and SEO. And with that, Matt, I'll let you take it away.
Well, thank you very much, Michelle. Hello, everyone. Greetings from beautiful, sunny downtown Baltimore, Maryland. I am Matt Mcdermott. I'm the Associate Vice President of Creative Strategy at ID5. And ID5, just briefly, is an integrated marketing and social design firm. We specialize in education, health, and nonprofits. So that's our bread and butter. That's who we work with. And this particular seminar, I couldn't be more excited about because of the fact that I'm a former Baltimore City public school teacher. I worked with at-risk youth in one of the worst performing schools in Baltimore City. So I have seen the need for the resources that University of Maryland and its partners provide. I've also served on a board of nonprofit, or a nonprofit board, where we work with youth throughout Baltimore City to help them with conflict resolution, advocacy, and community engagement. Hoping I can bring some of that today, bring some of that excitement. This is near and dear to my heart, almost as much as SEO, I guess. So with that, I am going to get started. Michelle, you don't have anything else to add before we jump in?
No, take it away, Matt.
All right, I'm going to take my face off of webcam. I have a face for radio and a voice for newspapers, so I'm going to spare you at least one of these right now. All right, there we go. So, just a reminder, if you do have questions as we go through this, please feel free to type them up in the chat. We will have a brief question and answer period at the very end of the webinar, and hopefully I can get to as many questions as possible, and even better, hopefully I have good answers to them. So for today's mission: learn practical tips and actionable strategies to ensure your audience sees your fantastic content. And there's a couple things we're going to do to reach that goal. First thing we're going to do is look at SEO factors that matter most. This is not an expert level SEO webinar. This is for those who are just getting started, those who have dabbled in the dark arts of SEO, and certainly those who want to know more. And this will hopefully be a good foundation and maybe even provide a couple new tips and tricks to try. We're also going to talk briefly about how to measure the success of SEO, and then we're going to also talk about some of the things that you should never ever do with SEO moving forward. With that said, I think one of the core things to note before you actually embark in SEO is to understand the bigger picture. This isn't about keywords. This isn't about search. There's a bigger purpose that you're here for. Why are we doing SEO? Why this webinar? It's because you want to create, you want to curate, and you want to maintain essential resources that can make a significant difference in people's lives and a significant difference in achieving your social marketing goals. SEO is a really powerful tool to do that. And it's a really great tool to help target messages and resources to your specific communities. We're going to start things off, loosen up with a poll actually. If you have a second, I'd love for you to tell me what your level of familiarity is with SEO right now. Some of you may have no experience, some of you may be just getting started. Moderate would be someone who uses it on occasion, maybe monthly, and then experts are people who are doing it all the time. I'll give you a second to register that. Okay, it looks like we have a pretty decent spread of those with little experience. Got a couple people who are going to keep me honest at the expert level. And another 10 seconds. All right, it's looking like 7 and 10 of you are still learning, getting your bearings in SEO, and that's okay. We're gonna do some more with that. Hopefully you'll walk away feeling a little bit more confident about checking one of those other buttons above. Thank you for that. That helps me kind of figure out where I can speed through and then also where I should probably spend a little bit of time. All right, so what is SEO? That is the eternal question. There's a company called Moz. They build tools for search engine optimization, and they've been a long-standing tool in the SEO community. So I figured why not go to the experts for this one. It's the practice of improving and promoting a website to increase the number of visitors the site receives from search engines. Now, there are many aspects of SEO to keep in mind when we're working on that operative definition. It is both the words on the page to the way the site's linked to you. There's a technical component as much as there is a content component. SEO is simply a matter of making sure your site is structured in a way that search engines understand. Search engines have grown up over the years, and it's a lot harder to game the system. And honestly, if you're putting out good content, you won't even need to do that. We'll get into that a little bit more in a moment. Now, before you can improve your search rankings, it's important to take inventory of your goals for your site itself. And I always challenge people to go back to their reason for creating their site, whether it's their organization site or a blog or something like that. What was the reason you created it? More importantly, who were you trying to reach out to? Who are your intended visitors? Who are your intended users? And what are their specific needs? What is some of the key content, particularly on individual pages, that you want to drive people to? And then finally, what do you want users to do when they get there? Is it to take an action? Is it to join an email list? Is it to bookmark you to continue to come back time and time again? Or is it just to get great content and see you as an expert? There are any number of reasons, and hopefully as you were working with your sites, you had those reasons at the forefront. You're going to be thinking about them again as far as SEO goes. So with that, I'd love to jump into some tips and tricks and some things to keep in mind as far as SEO factors that matter. One of the most important components here is quality. Everything starts with the quality of the content on your page. You not only need to make sure that your page is well written, but that the content is valuable to your community. We are, as I said before, we're long past the days of keyword stuffing and gaming the system. Search engines have wised up and they've adjusted their algorithms accordingly. Quality content, and that's content that's engaging, that's digestible, that's well researched, that's timely. That's what gets noticed, that's what gets shared, and that's what will ultimately support your journey up the ranks on Google search engine results pages. One thing to keep in mind as you pull content together, if this is content that is not fit for human consumption, it's probably not fit for the search engines that humans use. It's an important thing to keep in mind as you go. Now, there are multiple things you need to do in terms of research, and we'll talk about the different tools, and we'll talk about some of the tactics to keep in mind as you do that. But you need to research the keywords that people use to find your content. And Google Keyword Planner is a great tool. It's a free tool that helps you analyze the predictive metrics and identify some of the high impact suggestions for keywords. What it also does is gives you difficulty scores for words. There are certain keywords that you would love to rank for, but they have what they call a high difficulty score. A high difficulty score means there are many, many, many other entities out there that are ranking higher for that and that have that authority under that keyword. What you want to do is you want to find that middle ground, that balance, where it's a word that's or a phrase that's a little further down the difficulty scale, something that's still relevant to who you are, but perhaps would help to ensure that you show up a little bit higher. Something that not everybody's searching for. It may not have as much volume, but it certainly has relevance to who you are, what you talk about, and the resources you offer. Difficulty scores are a great way to begin to think about how you can rank in certain keyword areas and for certain phrases. One of my favorite hacks when I'm thinking about the keywords that I would like to include in content is I use Google's predictive search. I take a look at, I start typing in some of the topics or some of the keywords that I think I might want to use on a particular blog post or on a particular client's landing page. And it's amazing to see what people are searching for, how they're searching for it. There are certain things that you want to consider where to use those keywords, though. And we'll dig into that a little bit more in a moment, but just at the outset, title tags. These are the things that appear at the very top of your, at the browser page, where if you roll over, it'll give you a page's browser title. There's the URL, the actual content that's within the URL or the web address. There's the H1 for your headlines that are within your site. And then it's an important thing to keep in mind that with those keywords, that they are visible. The H1s and the H2s are what crawlers look at. They want to see where it is on your site. They want to see that it's in some of those places that people are more likely to look. Title tags, URLs, headlines. Crawlers see those first. For those of you with room in your budget, there is also Moz's Keyword Explorer. It offers a more advanced way to identify keywords that people search for and those keywords that you might want to include in your content. Again, you can get away with most of Google's tools as it pertains to search. And again, we'll go over some of that in a little bit. The timeliness of your content, the freshness of your content, these are things that help you rank as well. Think about the news. Think about trending events. Think about other instances in which your content could have extra relevance in the moment. Google prioritizes fresh content. It prioritizes content that aligns with where the search trends are going now. So if something hits the news, like say the Mueller report, for example, those are opportunities to explore your existing content as well as align new content that you're pulling together in service of that. Now, as part of this, it may mean you overhaul outdated content or create long-term valuable content. It also could include having more high quality and relevant pages on your site that lead more traffic because it will allow you to reach a wider pool of keywords to target. Certainly outreach and promotion. Other sites will be more likely to link to your page if you're having that timely content. As people were talking about it, Google is looking for it. So there's answers. Being able to create content that will show up as answers in Google's search engine results pages. These are those little elements. So Wikipedia does a really good job of that, where you get a little snippet at the top of your search engine results. So say you type in youth conflict resolution strategies, for example. Chances are there will be some sort of answer that shows up, something that gets almost treated like a blurb, something that demands the eye's attention at the very top of things. You want your content to get discovered there. Creating content that can turn into answers in the search results page is really the holy grail of visibility. Let's talk about depth, and this relates to not only the high quality content that you produce, but understanding that the rest of your site needs substance as well. You don't want to slap an image with a sentence down on a page and call it a day. You want to give your users enough content that makes sense for the purpose of each page. By writing more, by providing more material, it also provides you a more natural way to include particular keywords. You've no doubt faced examples of some of these link farm pages where it doesn't read quite right. It reads like maybe it was written from someone who speaks another language, or that it was written by a computer, and that's where they still try to game the system by including keywords wherever they can, and it creates a really unnatural flow to the prose. The longer your pieces, though, don't shy away from longer content. The longer that content, the more opportunity you have to build in some of those keywords naturally. Search engines have to be able to crawl your pages easily. If you want Google to discover your pages and index them, you need to take advantage of some of those elements I talked about before, making sure your title tags on your pages use some of those keywords, making sure the keywords show up in your URLs, making sure that those keywords show up in headlines and in anchor links, which we'll also talk about in a moment. Google is also looking for keywords to show up earlier on the page, more towards the top of the page. These crawlers are sophisticated, but they also are crawling billions of pages every day. So they do have a little bit of a shorthand: title tags, URLs, headlines, and keywords appearing in content earlier in a page. As people make the move to mobile, as more people were reviewing sites and internet content primarily from the mobile devices, whether it's a phone or whether it's a tablet, Google is realizing that it needs to move in that direction too. And part of how it's doing that is giving preference to sites that are mobile optimized. What we call responsive design, those are sites that if you were to shrink the window on your desktop, the site reconfigures but doesn't lose fidelity. It doesn't make the text too small as it goes to a smaller screen. Sites that are responsive rank better in search because Google says that this is a site that understands users' needs and assigns an added degree of authority. Now, duplicate content. This is always a tough one, and there's something called canonical tags. This is going into the actual code itself. But with canonical tags, you may have pages that have duplicate content on them. You may have duplicate pages, in fact. For example, oftentimes the home page of a website there could be multiple examples of it on the server, and all of them are accessible if you type in the right URL, but only one of them a site should indicate is the thing that Google should look at. If you have duplicate content, you need to make sure that your code provides for, actually I'm going to circle this real quick and show you what I mean. This right here, you want to make sure that your site has a canonical tag for pages that are duplicate. Otherwise, Google will downgrade. It will think that it's spam. It will think that it's content that is not relevant, or it may even think that you have some other nefarious intent. So there is that component of canonicals. This is a little more inside baseball, but it is good to know. And then there's also making sure that particularly when you redevelop a site, for example, if you relaunch a site, that you use 301 redirects. That means that if you've ever gotten that 404 page, you've gone to a URL, wait a second, this URL isn't showing up anymore. It's because they failed to redirect you to where it lives now. When a site is redesigned, oftentimes the entire hierarchy and architecture of a site is redesigned, meaning new URLs for certain pages that have been there, these legacy pages. You need to make sure that that content is redirected. Okay, speed. We're talking about user experience, and this is going to continue to come up. In addition to making sure that your site is responsive, you need to make sure that it performs well. Much like with responsive websites, Google rewards sites that are friendlier to use on mobile. Sites that have above average loading times are more likely to get strikes from Google's algorithm than those that load above average. So the average site load time, for example, is about 3 seconds. If you're behind that curve, if your site is taking more than 3 seconds to load, or if your page is taking more than 3 seconds to load, Google could knock you for that. Sites that load faster than that, in fact, I believe it's Amazon that tries to optimize its pages to load within half a second or a blink of an eye. Those tend to be ones that get a little more of that search engine optimization juice. So faster pages. Also, Google is starting to give preference to pages that have richer content, whether we're talking images or video or audio. People spend twice as much time on a page with video than they do on pages without, and that increases the amount of time someone spends on a site overall. The amount of time someone spends on a page is often seen as an indicator of that page's worthiness, that page's relevance. So Google's looking at that and saying, well, people are spending more time on this page about this particular topic. Well, then perhaps this is something we need to be paying attention to, and perhaps we need to make sure that shows up a little further in the search engine results. In addition, bear with me, I'm losing my connection here. Google also provides preference to sites that have increased security, including HTTPS in having a site that does have that SSL or secure socket layer, and that does include that HTTPS prefix, indicates to Google that you have taken the time to be a responsible member of the internet. Google has also announced in the past that having that SSL, that secure socket layer certificate, is one of the easiest things site owners can do to boost their SEO ranking. Trust and security are a priority for Google. The last thing they want to do is to be sending people to websites that have ill intent, malicious intent, or that could harm the users or their machines that they're going and visiting from. So having that secondary layer of security is a really good way and an easier way to get yourself up there in the search rankings, and certainly have Google see you as more authoritative. Now, I had mentioned this before. You want to be able to build your keywords when you can into your URLs. For example, social media for suicide prevention here. This is very similar to what someone might look for if they were researching that topic. The fact that it shows up in the URL indicates that they recognize the importance of it, and Google recognizes that this is most likely a link that will have relevance for the person searching. There's also the component of building keywords into every title. So you see these titles here: Indeed, job search, 6 best ways to find your next job. These are the elements that will appear on your browser in the browser tab at the very top. You'll see like those little browsers, and it'll have some writing at the top of it. Again, this is the Google crawler's shorthand for being able to crawl through all of these different sites. They figure if somebody's taken the time to build that into their title tag, it's a better indicator that the content is going to be relevant. All right, meta descriptions. Now, this is a tough one because I know a lot of people put a lot of work into writing out meta descriptions. And unfortunately, meta descriptions don't have as much impact on your SEO, but well done meta descriptions do have an impact in helping you stand out in your search engine results page. So whenever you Google something and you use very specific words, Google will go ahead and give you a visual indicator. In this case, we see children is highlighted here. What that does is it provides the searcher with an instant signal that the content on this page is probably relevant to their search. The more words that light up like a Christmas tree in your meta description, the better the chances that your user searching for content will see you and immediately consider you as a potential source to click through to. Meta descriptions should accurately summarize the page's content. They should be short. Generally, you don't want them much longer than, I believe it's about 160 characters. And I'll talk about that a little bit more later. But it doesn't, again, necessarily improve your SEO. It is an excellent visual cue for those seeking you out when they actually get to the search engine results. So headings. The H1 and H2 tags are really important. They are seen by Google as a shorthand for whether or not something has meaningful content or not. So if I was searching for, say in this case, a MacBook Air, they have placed it right here in the H1 on this page. That will stand out. That will help that to rank more. Google will look at the H1 tag or even the H2 tags to determine if there is usable, relevant content here. We've talked about this a little bit already, but if you want high engagement, you want users to spend time on your page. It's making sure that your content is relevant, that it's digestible, and that it includes elements that could induce people to spend a bit more time, whether it's watching video, whether it is listening to a podcast that's embedded in there. You want people to spend time on your page. You want them to share it. You want people to see it as an authority. And that engagement is recognized by Google, and it appears in different things like backlinks, things like that, which again, we're about to get to. This is more of a legacy thing. When a site is redesigned, you want to make sure that it still basically does the same thing over time. Google will give preference to sites. Even if you've redesigned, you could take a quick hit in your SEO, but if your site is still working basically the same way, if it's still providing roughly the same information, the same interaction, Google will recognize that as a positive. People want to return to familiar, and what we can see here, if LinkedIn was able to decide to make a massive change like this, they're still the same LinkedIn though. Their designs changed, but what they do has not. What you can do on the site largely has not. They may have expanded it, but the functionality is still there. And that's an important part, not only for showing up in search, but also for keeping users coming back. You don't want to disrupt their perception of you unless it's a negative perception. Value is extremely important. People, you want to look for links from trusted quality websites. When we curate on our pages, we need to make sure that anybody we link out to is a relevant source, is a credible source, is someone that we feel okay putting our name next to. You want to be a conscientious curator in that sense. Don't link to sites that are unreliable. Don't link to inaccurate sources that aren't user-friendly. If you link to bad sites, you will lose user trust, not just in SEO, but just overall. This is a brand thing as much as it is an SEO thing. Your traffic and rankings will suffer as people turn away from you if they've noted that you are continuing to link out to sites that aren't worthwhile. So again, be a conscientious curator. Now, and I do see your questions coming through, and I promise I will get through those as well. There's some good questions already. There's something called the anchor link. And when you are putting together a anchor link, this is basically what we also call a hyperlink. So if you're writing a bunch of content on your page, there may be things that are clickable in your text. Those are called anchor links. And what you're seeing here is the actual HTML of that anchor link. So for example, say you just wrote a sentence about how people should know about National Children's Mental Health Awareness Day. You may find that National Children's Mental Health Awareness Day is what is actually underlined as clickable. What it does, though, is it goes to this here. You oftentimes, you want to make sure that what you've listed here looks something like what is listed here. The more your anchor link looks like the actual text that is accompanying it, the better. It should be succinct. It needs to be relevant to the link to page, and you don't want to overuse any particular keywords. So in this example, this is a really good model of a, let me close that so you can actually see these. This is a really good example of our core keywords in here aligning with our keywords here. It's a simple thing, but these things make a difference. Now, there's something called backlinks. Backlinks are, I kind of look at those as the same way researchers may look at citations. Backlinks are incoming links from another web page. So for example, if someone links to something on your page from their site, that's a backlink to your page. You have less control over who backlinks you, unfortunately, but there are things you can do. Google offers, or Google gives preference to sites that people link to. So if you're the New York Times, for example, chances are there are hundreds of thousands of sites that are linking to you, and linking to the New York Times every single day. When Google looks at that and says, oh, wow, look at all of these people who are linking to the New York Times article on the Mueller testimony, Google will then pop New York Times article on the Mueller testimony up towards the top because so many people are linking back to it. It goes back to having quality content, trusted content, and engaging content. This will increase the likelihood. That's kind of one of those things you can do now that you may benefit from later. If you're putting good content out there, eventually someone will take notice, and hopefully they will share your content or link back to your content. Again, kind of like a research citation. Sometimes you providing backlinks to other sites as well. Again, that's where I was talking about that conscientious curation. By you linking to other sites, it can kind of create a certain degree of reciprocity. I link to you, you link to me. It's not unusual to see sites that interlink with one another. Just make sure you're linking back to reputable sites. They'll notice when you're sending traffic to them. Their webmaster, their people may notice where you're coming from, and they may then take a look at what you wrote that links to their site, and they may do vice versa. There are all kinds of strategies for building backlinks as well, and for going out there. It's more of a PR and outreach strategy than it is a hardcore SEO strategy, though. Authority, as we've talked about over and over so far, as I've talked about, you haven't gotten to say anything yet. The more people link to and share your website, the more authority you have, and that improves your search rankings, period. Authority equals rankings juice. You show up higher, the more authority you have. Now, there's also locality, and this is multiple components here. Consider the region that you think your users will be coming from. Where someone lives can impact the language or the dialect of their search, so that could necessitate you adjusting some of your keywords or even adjusting some of your content to make sure that it is relevant for those locations. Conducting a search for social work clinics from your home if you were at home, for example, and you were conducting a search on social work clinics and you live in Virginia, it may yield different results than if you were at your work in Maryland, for example, and search for social work clinics. Google will base some of its results on where you live, what you've searched before, and certainly if you are logged into your browser like Chrome, it will also base it on your past searches. Google's job is to provide the most relevant searches possible, and it's gotten much more personalized about that. Location is just one of those ways that happens. User experience, user experience, user experience. This is big. Optimizing for mobile, making sure that you have content that appears well on any screen, text is readable on any screen. Google is, as much as content like the actual text that people are reading, Google is prioritizing a better user experience, better designed pages, better designed content, better designed experiences as someone goes through. All of that factors into the user experience. You want people to enjoy their, we'll call it their stay on your website. Search prioritizes that. Search rankings prioritize a better user experience. So that takes us to our next poll question. I just want to make sure everybody's awake here. I'm curious, how often do you review the SEO performance of your site's content? Take a minute, daily, weekly, monthly, quarterly, yearly, never. Kudos to you if you actually do it daily, because I don't do that for sure. I know at ID5, we're probably not looking at how ID5 performs daily. We may be looking at it for some of our clients, and oftentimes it's related to our ad campaigns, but daily is a commitment for sure, and it oftentimes requires those resources, i.e. having someone who does SEO full-time.